A week before our wedding, my fiancée vanished, ran off with my friend, of all people, and ended things with a text. No call, no explanation, just a message and silence. Fast forward 3 years, she suddenly shows up again, wanting to pick up where we left off. Only problem, I'm already married, to someone she can't stand. But before I unpack all that emotional chaos, let me back up and give you some context. I grew up just outside of Denver, in a small town where life moved at a slower pace. My parents were your typical middle-class, hard-working folks who did their best to give me a solid, normal upbringing. My dad worked as a mechanical engineer at a local manufacturing plant, and my mom taught 3rd grade at the elementary school down the road. I've got an older sister who's now married with 2 kids. She lives in Chicago. We're not super tight, but we're civil. We catch up over holidays and birthdays, small talk, family updates, nothing too deep. Back in high school, I was a pretty average kid. Not a star student or anything, my grades were alright, nothing that would have landed me a scholarship. I played soccer but mostly rode the bench. I had a tight-knit group of friends, the kind you hang with at lunch and text at night about dumb stuff. Over time, most of them faded into the background. As for dating, I was never exactly beating the girls off with a stick. My first real relationship didn't happen until junior year. We lasted about 8 months before she left me for some guy with a better smile, and his own car. I ended up going to Colorado State, studying computer science. That's where things started to click for me. I found my people, and I finally started feeling like I belonged somewhere. Turned out, I was actually pretty decent at coding. Romance still wasn't my strong suit, but I had a couple short-term relationships that lasted a few months each. Graduated with a respectable GPA and landed a junior dev job at a small tech firm in Denver. Nothing flashy, but it paid the bills. I was just your average guy, 5 feet 7 inches, not exactly turning heads in a crowd. By 25, I started seeing my hairline creeping back a bit, and while I stayed decently in shape, I knew I wasn't anyone's fantasy. Just a regular dude who liked sports, video games, and those oddly satisfying power washing videos online. Oh, and I've got a serious addiction to spicy food. Like, sweat through your shirt, spicy. When I hit 27, I felt like I was finally settling into real adulthood. I had my own, tiny, apartment not far from work, was climbing the ladder at a network security company, and I'd even managed to pay off my student loans. Dating was hit or miss. Mostly first dates that led nowhere, thanks to the apps. Then I met Julieka at a tech conference in Vegas. My company had sent me to run our booth, which felt about as thrilling as watching grass grow. That's where I saw her, Julieka. 25, long blonde hair, green eyes, and this radiant smile that could derail your entire train of thought. She wore pencil skirts and blouses that were all business, but somehow still hinted at just enough to make you notice. The kind of woman who would have walked right past me in college without a second glance. But somehow, between the slow hours at the booth, we started talking. She laughed at my dumb jokes and actually seemed interested in what I did, network security for healthcare clients. At the happy hour on night 2, we ended up talking for hours. She gave me her number, and I swear I floated through the rest of that week. My friends thought it was sketchy. My best buddy Joe said, "Man, she's like a 10, and you're maybe a 6 on a good day. What's the catch?" But I couldn't see the warning signs through those green eyes. Julie knew exactly how attractive she was, and she used it like it was her own personal cheat code. She could flash a smile and get us the best seat in a packed restaurant. On flights, she'd get bumped to first class for free. Even traffic stops. She'd charm her way out of tickets like it was nothing. At the time, I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. Like I was living some kind of dream. What I didn't realize was how much she fed off that attention. If we were somewhere and she wasn't the center of everyone's focus, her mood would tank. She'd get quiet, moody, suddenly claiming a headache or complaining about the food or the movie or whatever we were doing. And her phone, it was glued to her hand. At dinner, in bed, even when we were out with my friends. I figured it was just part of the look-eating world. She always said she was building her brand. What I didn't know was that Julie had multiple Instagram accounts, each one crafted around a different version of her. One for fitness. One professional. One called Julie_babe that was, let's just say, curated. The first major red flag should have been how she treated people in customer service. Super sweet when things went her way, but the moment something went wrong, she flipped. I remember one time a waitress accidentally spilled water, didn't even get it on Julie, and she demanded to speak to the manager like it was some personal offense. The poor girl looked like she was going to cry, and I just sat there, frozen, not knowing how to handle it. Still, the physical side of our relationship was electric. Julie was stunning, and when she was happy, she made me feel like the center of her universe. Looking back, I know now it was textbook manipulation. But back then, I was completely wrapped around her finger. We managed a long-distance relationship for 6 months, me in Denver, her in Phoenix. I did most of the traveling, but she made a few visits too. Things seemed like they were working. Then her company opened a Denver office and offered her a position. She called me, absolutely thrilled, and I was just as excited. Within 2 months, she packed up and moved in with me. Living together was a whole new ballgame. My little bachelor pad slowly turned into something straight out of a Pinterest board. Suddenly there were throw pillows, plants in every corner, and motivational quotes in gold frames. My gaming room? Gone. It became her mini photo studio for Instagram. Still, I was happy she was there, even with all the changes. But as we crossed the 1-year loop, more red flags started popping up. She'd get unreasonably jealous if I so much as mentioned a female coworker. She even surprised me at work during lunch a few times, something I later realized was her way of checking up on me. Once, she went through my phone while I was asleep. When I called her out, she claimed she was just setting my alarm for me. I wanted to believe her. We'd been together for 2 years by then. A year into it, I'd proposed. I popped the question at this upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place that makes your credit card flinch. The bill alone wiped out an entire month's salary. And still, Julie made a comment afterward that she'd expected something more grand. Apparently, she'd been hoping for a proposal that could go viral on TikTok or Instagram. But she said yes anyway. The ring? Oh, I bought the ring, yeah, the one she kept tagging in her Instagram stories for months like a virtual vision board. A 2.6-carat diamond that glared so hard it almost blinded me when the sun hit it. It also came with a $16,000 price tag I couldn't afford without taking out a loan. But hey, I was in love. Or at least I thought I was. Then came the avalanche of wedding planning. I handed over my credit card without thinking twice. $32,000 for a vineyard venue outside Boulder. $6,000 for her dream dress. Another $8,000 for food and an open bar. Sure, I was drowning in debt, but I told myself it would all be worth it. This was supposed to be the start of forever. Julie wanted a spring wedding, full of Pinterest-worthy photo ops and 200 guests, half of whom I didn't even recognize. But I was on board. I figured the stress was temporary, and soon we'd be married and coasting into happily ever after. My parents? They tried to raise a flag, gently suggesting we tone it down a little. But Julie didn't take it well. She spiraled for 2 days, crying, accusing them of not accepting her, saying they didn't see her as part of the family. I caved. I took her side. It put a serious strain on my relationship with my parents, one that honestly took years to fully mend. After 8 months of planning chaos, we were finally 1 week out. Everything was set. Deposits locked in, non-refundable. My college buddies were already making their way to town for the bachelor party. Julie's bridesmaids had just finished their final fittings. The vineyard menu was approved. Everything was ready. I was stressed about money, sure, but deep down, I was excited. I kept telling myself all the pressure would melt away the moment we said, I do. Julie had been acting a little off, more distracted than usual, but I chalked it up to last-minute details. She was constantly meeting with the wedding planner team, including, weirdly enough, my friend Luke. Luke had moved to Denver a year before and somehow gotten tight with Julie. He was helping her with the wedding playlist, which felt odd, because Luke couldn't care less about that kind of stuff. Should have been a clue, but I missed it. 1 week before the big day, I just wrapped up a conference call with a client when I checked my phone. There it was. A text from Julie. I can't go through with the wedding. I've met someone else. I'm so sorry. I hope you'll understand someday that this is for the best. Just like that. 2 years together, $60,000 into the wedding, and she ended it with a handful of words sent through a screen. It couldn't have taken her more than 10 seconds to write. I called her right away. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I texted. Nothing. Even reached out to her mom. Silence. Panicked and heartbroken, I drove straight to her apartment. I was so shaken, I actually blew through a red light and nearly got T-boned. When I finally got there, she was gone. Her closet was half empty. Her makeup, gone. It was like someone had erased her from the space. I sat down on the bed we bought together from IKEA, the same bed we argued about while putting it together, and I just stared. 4 hours. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The caterer wanted final numbers. My cousin texted asking when I was picking up the tux. My mom wanted to confirm the centerpieces. I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. I couldn't even form words. Eventually, I called Joe, my best friend since college. He showed up not long after and found me still sitting on that bed, blank stare, phone in hand. "What's going on, man? You look like somebody died," he said. I just handed him my phone with the message still on the screen. He read it slowly, his face shifting from confusion to disbelief to rage. "She texted you?" That's when I finally broke. Not just a few tears, this was a full-on, from-the-gut breakdown. I sobbed in front of my best friend, who didn't say much, just sat beside me, hand on my shoulder, letting me get it all out. In between sobs, I asked, "What the hell do I do now? The wedding's next weekend. Everyone's coming. It's all paid for." Joe didn't miss a beat. "First, we call everyone. Let them know it's off." The next 24 hours were a blur. A nightmare. Joe took over vendor coordination while I made the worst phone calls of my life. I had to explain to my family that the wedding wasn't happening. My mom cried so hard, I could barely understand her. My dad, he said nothing, just stared, jaw clenched like he might snap a table in half. My sister offered to fly out and stay with me, even with 2 little kids at home. The hardest calls were to my friends, most of them were already en route. Neil, my old college roommate, was on a layover in Chicago when I reached him. "You're kidding," he said. "She just left." My cousin Lily had already landed. He grabbed a rental car and came straight to my apartment, suitcase and all. That night, 4 of my closest friends stayed over. None of us slept much. They were just as stunned and furious as I was, and none of us had any idea where Julie was, or who the someone else might be. It took 2 days to get the answer. Joe called me up and said, "I saw them. Julie and Luke." He'd spotted them at the airport, international departures, wrapped up in each other, kissing like nothing else existed. Luggage in tow, bound for Bali, our honeymoon destination. He even sent me a photo, like he needed me to see it to believe it. I didn't want to look, but I did. Then I checked our joint account. Gone. 15 grand, our honeymoon savings, withdrawn 3 days before she sent that text. And it all clicked. All those times Luke showed up for wedding planning. The nights Julie came home late from drinks with friends. The password change on her phone. The way she'd get weirdly defensive if I asked simple questions. It had all been happening right in front of me, and I hadn't seen a damn thing. After the shock wore off, I found myself scrolling through old photo albums and our social media pages, and suddenly, the signs were glaring. Luke had been right there in the background the whole time, literally. Lurking in group photos, tagged in comments with inside jokes that never made sense to me, even checking in at spots Julie and I used to go together. I felt like an idiot. Played. Completely blind to what had been happening under my nose. That night, I snapped. I started tossing the stuff she'd left behind into garbage bags, makeup, clothes, whatever reminded me of her. I wiped every picture of us off my phone, blocked her on everything, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. I even changed the Netflix password. It was petty, sure, but in that moment, it gave me this tiny, fleeting sense of control. Then came the second wave of damage control, calling all 200 guests to let them know the wedding was off. Everyone had questions. Everyone wanted to know what happened. And every time I said, "I just found out myself," I had to relive the pain again. Even Julie's parents reached out. Her dad called, clearly pissed, demanding answers because she told them I was the one who cancelled the wedding, said I cheated. Cheated. I didn't even respond at first. I just forwarded him the breakup text and the airport photo Joe had taken. After that, he went silent. He muttered an apology and hung up. I never heard from him again. The vendors? Yeah, they weren't exactly compassionate either. Refundable turned out to be a cruel joke. The venue kept 3 grand. The caterer gave back maybe 10%. The florist gave nothing. The only person who met me halfway was the photographer, who returned half his fee. Meanwhile, my credit cards were maxed out, thousands of dollars poured into a wedding that never happened. The next morning, as if everything hadn't already gone to hell, Julie sent me an email. No apology. No explanation. Just a short, emotionless request to send some sentimental items she'd left behind to her parents' house. Like this was just some little spat. I didn't reply. Then Luke, in a move that nearly pushed me over the edge, texted me. "I know you're hurting, but when you calm down, I hope you'll understand, you can't choose who you love. That was it. That line. That smug, self-justifying garbage. I slammed my phone against the floor so hard it shattered into pieces. I didn't even care. I just stood there, breathing heavy, staring at the busted screen. The next 6 months were the darkest time in my life. I dropped 30 pounds without even trying. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work. My brain felt like it was constantly buffering. My boss eventually sat me down and told me, nicely but firmly, that I was on a performance improvement plan, which was really just corporate speak for, get it together or you're gone. I stopped sleeping in our bed. Just couldn't do it. I spent nights on the couch instead, surrounded by the ghost of what used to be. I couldn't break the lease, so I was stuck in this apartment filled with memories of her, while Julie and Luke went gallivanting across Bali, Thailand, and Australia, posting sunset selfies funded with the money we had saved for our honeymoon. My friends tried their best. Joe and Lily basically moved in with me for the first few weeks. They made sure I was showering, eating, doing something besides just staring at the ceiling. My sister flew out too, bringing her 2 kids, who filled the place with the kind of joyful chaos I didn't know I needed. But eventually, everyone had to go back to their lives, and I was left alone, with my thoughts, which had turned darker than I care to admit. I replayed every detail of our relationship, wondering where I'd gone wrong, how I hadn't seen it coming, and whether Julie had ever actually loved me at all. The part that broke me the most wasn't losing Julie. It was losing my trust in people. My belief that love was something safe, or even real. I started therapy. Actually, multiple therapists. They all told me the same thing, that this wasn't about me, it was about her. But when someone tosses you aside like garbage, it's hard not to internalize it. I kept showing up to work, but it was like I was running on fumes. Eventually, my boss called me in and said, "James, everyone here knows what you've been through. Take some time, clear your head." So I did. I took 3 weeks off and went home to my parents' place. Back to my childhood bedroom. My mom cooked all my favorite meals. My dad didn't ask questions, just put tools in my hand and roped me into house projects. We fixed the deck, painted the garage, cleaned out the gutters. The physical work helped. It gave my mind something to hold on to besides heartbreak. When I came back to Denver, something inside me had shifted. I knew I needed to rebuild from the ground up. I bought a new phone, new number, started over on social media, changed the locks, got rid of anything that smelled like her memory. I even painted the apartment and moved all the furniture around. I needed to reclaim the space, make it mine again. 7 months after the whole nightmare, I was finally breathing a little easier. I'd landed a new job, challenging, but it gave me a sense of purpose again. I'd made some friends at the office. On a whim, I tried out rock climbing, something I'd always wanted to do but never did because Julie thought it was dumb. I started eating better, working out, sleeping through the night for the first time in what felt like forever. That's when I met Sandy. We bumped into each other at the climbing gym. She was 30, a physical therapist, recently divorced. No kids. She wasn't like Julie, at all. She had wild, curly hair she didn't bother taming, didn't wear much makeup, and clearly dressed for comfort over fashion. But her eyes, man, they were this deep shade of brown that seemed to cut right through the noise. And her laugh, God, her laugh could lift the weight off a room. Our first actual conversation happened when she told me my climbing technique was basically a fast track to a torn ligament. Not the most romantic opener, but she was right. She offered to help fix it, and that turned into a coffee, which turned into dinner. I was cautious, very cautious. On our 3rd date, I told her the whole story about Julie, half expecting her to run. Instead, she opened up about her own past. Her ex had been a functioning addict who hid his problems until after they got married. They'd split 2 years earlier. "We all have scars, James," she said. "The question is whether we let them define us." We took it painfully slow. No rushing into anything. No kissing on the first few dates. No introducing friends for the first few months. And with Sandy, there was no drama, no games, no scrolling through her phone mid-conversation. She was fully there, grounded. She had her own place, her own friends, her own life. She wasn't trying to fuse our identities into one social media-ready couple's brand. She didn't need to post about us to prove something. What she did need, what she expected, was honesty, respect, communication. I still remember the first time we had an argument. I don't even remember what it was about, something stupid probably. After everything I'd been through, I braced myself when Sandy and I had our first argument. I waited for the cold shoulder, the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive jabs, the kind of games I'd gotten used to with Julie. But Sandy just calmly said, "I disagree, and here's why," and we actually talked it through like grown adults. It took me months to stop flinching every time things got serious, to stop expecting some hidden trapdoor to swing open underneath me. Because with Julie, there had always been an angle, always. After a year of steady, drama-free happiness, I finally felt solid enough to suggest moving in together. We found a small rental house, not fancy, but it had a backyard for Sandy's dog and was conveniently close to both our jobs. Moving in with Sandy couldn't have been more different from what I'd experienced before. No fights over throw pillows. No staged selfies in every corner. No arguing about whose stuff fit the aesthetic. Just two people creating a home, not a photo shoot backdrop. 6 months after we moved in, I knew. She was the one. Not in that desperate, clinging way I'd once mistaken for love, but in the way you know you've finally come home. I proposed at the top of a mountain, after a brutal hike that nearly wiped me out because, let's be honest, I was in way worse shape than I thought. No fancy restaurant, no camera crew hiding in the bushes, just the two of us, surrounded by a view that made the struggle worth it. She said yes, even though her fingers were too swollen from the climb to slip the ring on. It was a simple band, modest, exactly what she wanted, not some oversized status symbol to flash around. 6 months later, we got married at the courthouse. No spectacle, just close family and a handful of good friends. No $6,000 dress. No $32,000 venue. No endless quest for Instagram likes. We took the money we would have spent on a big wedding and used it for a down payment on a small house instead. For the first time in years, I could breathe. It felt like the Julie chapter was finally over. Or at least, that's what I thought. 3 years into my marriage with Sandy, the past decided to show up uninvited. It was a Saturday morning, and I was out front mowing the lawn. I saw a white Range Rover pull up and figured it was someone lost. Our yard had grown a little wild, thanks to my terrible landscaping skills. But then she stepped out. Julie, looking exactly like I remembered, except maybe a little sharper around the edges. Designer everything, hair and nails done like she'd just walked out of a magazine. Casual, but clearly expensive. She wore her money like armor. But it was the look in her eyes that caught me, hard, cold, different. "James," she said, like we were old friends bumping into each other at the grocery store. "You look good." I killed the lawnmower and stared at her. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She smiled, that smile, the one that used to melt me, but now just turned my stomach. "I've been thinking about you. About us." She chuckled lightly, like this was some cute inside joke. Like we hadn't been broken longer than we were ever whole. Like she hadn't drained our accounts, bailed a week before our wedding, and run off with my so-called friend. She stepped closer, and that familiar perfume, her old signature scent, hit me like a punch. "I know you're angry. And you have every right to be. But what we had, it was real, wasn't it? You still think about me. I know you do." "I'm married," I said, flatly. Her eyes flicked toward the house behind me. For a second, something flickered in her expression, pain, regret maybe, but it was gone before it really formed. Just then, Sandy opened the front door. She was holding a coffee mug, wearing my old college t-shirt and a pair of shorts, hair piled up in a messy bun. She looked effortlessly real, effortlessly beautiful. Julie gave her a once-over, and the sneer that spread across her face said it all. "Hi, I'm Julieka," she said brightly, with a tone that dripped fake sweetness. James and I were engaged. The way she said it, it wasn't an introduction, it was a challenge. Sandy didn't miss a beat. She walked over, slipped an arm around my waist, and said calmly, "I know exactly who you are. Now, why are you at our house?" Julie ignored her, focusing on me like Sandy wasn't even standing there. "Can we talk, alone, just for a minute?" "No," I said, before she could finish. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here. In front of my wife." Julie let out a little laugh, incredulous. "Come on, James. This isn't you. Living in a little suburban house, married to her," she said, waving a dismissive hand at Sandy. "When you used to say I was the one. We had plans, remember?" "Yeah," I said. "Plans you destroyed." I made it clear she needed to leave, now. And just like that, the mask slipped. Her whole demeanor changed. "You can't be serious," she spat. "You're really choosing her over me? Look at her, James. Then look at me. You know who you really want." Before I could even respond, Sandy stepped forward, cool as ice. He already made his choice, she said. 2 years ago, when you showed him exactly who you are. Her voice didn't waver. Get off our property, now, or I'm calling the police. For the first time, Julie looked like someone had actually gotten through to her. Like someone had finally shut the door she thought she'd always be able to open. She tried one last time. You know how good we were together, James. Tell her how good it was. I just shook my head. It's over, Julie. Don't come back. As Sandy and I turned to walk inside, Julie called after me. This isn't over, James. You'll realize what a huge mistake you're making. She'll never make you happy the way I could. We locked the door behind us, but her words stuck with me longer than I wanted to admit. Julie was never good at taking no for an answer. Deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of it. And sure enough, over the next 2 weeks, the floodgates opened. First, it was the texts, dozens of them, sent from different numbers every time I blocked her. Then came the emails. Somehow, Julie got her hands on Sandy's work number and started calling the clinic where she worked, non-stop. It didn't matter that it was completely inappropriate, she just didn't care. She bombarded her with calls, voicemails, even messages left with the receptionist. Meanwhile, I was getting flooded with texts. The tone jumped around like she couldn't decide who she was trying to be, pleading 1 second. Please, James, just talk to me. We can fix this. Then turning manipulative. Remember how good we were together. No one knows you like I do. Then veering straight into threats. You have no idea what you're losing. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. And finally, full-on delusional. We're meant to be together. You know it. She's just a rebound. I kept every message, but I didn't reply. Sandy and I agreed, engaging would only feed the fire. But Julie wasn't backing down. If anything, she was ramping up. It escalated when she showed up at the front desk at my office. No warning. She caused a scene loud enough that security had to escort her out. I was mortified. Then she somehow got a hold of my parents' address. She mailed them a long, unhinged letter, begging them to help me see the light. My mom called, genuinely confused, asking what was going on. I had to explain, again, that Julie wasn't well, and that they should ignore anything she sent. She even made a fake Instagram account, probably more than one, to spy on our lives. She followed our friends, commented on old photos, pretending we were still talking, still working things out. I had to call people personally and tell them, don't respond. She's lying. She's not part of my life. But the final straw came when she physically confronted Sandy. She followed her in a super-low-key parking lot, waited until she was alone, cornered her at her car and launched into a tirade, telling Sandy that I would always love her more, that she was just a phase, that I belonged to Julie. Sandy came home shaken, not because she believed anything Julie said, but because it was genuinely scary. She wouldn't let me close my car door. James, she said, still rattled. She kept saying you were her soulmate, and that I was just, in the way. She's unbalanced. That was it. That's when I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to end it, for real, and for good. I started digging. I wanted to understand what the hell had pushed Julie over the edge. Turns out, her life had completely imploded. Luke had dumped her, left her for someone younger, surprise surprise. She'd blown through most of her savings on bad investments and got laid off when her company downsized. No job, no prospects. At 31, she was living back at home with her parents and drowning in debt. A mutual friend told me, she's been talking about you constantly, James. Says leaving you was the worst mistake of her life. She's not right. She thinks getting back with you will fix everything. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't the love of her life, I was her backup plan. Her parachute. In her mind, she just had to get rid of Sandy and slide right back into my life like nothing happened. So I came up with a plan. I bought a burner phone and texted her, pretending to have doubts. Said maybe she was right about my marriage. That I needed to see her. I told her to meet me at a coffee shop. She jumped on it immediately, like I'd handed her a winning lottery ticket. Her messages were all hearts and emojis. She actually believed I was coming back. Sandy was nervous. Are you sure about this? She's unstable. That's exactly why I'm meeting her somewhere public, I told her. And I'm recording everything. We need to end this, and asking nicely isn't working. I got to the coffee shop early, but Julie was already there, sitting at a table near the window, dressed like she was going to a victory dinner. Designer clothes, flawless hair, nails done. She smiled when she saw me, like she'd already won. I sat down and let her talk. She launched into this fantasy script about how she always knew we were meant to be, how leaving me was a mistake, how she and I just needed a fresh start. That's when I pulled out my phone, placed it on the table, and hit record. "Let's be clear, Julie," I said calmly. "You left me a week before our wedding. You ran off with my friend Luke. You took $15,000 from our joint account. Then you told everyone I cheated. Now that Luke's dumped you and you're broke, you want back in. Is any part of that wrong?" Her smile cracked. Her face hardened instantly. "That's not fair," she snapped. "I just made a mistake." "A mistake," I repeated. "Like harassing my wife at her job, showing up at my office and my parents' house, making fake Instagram accounts to spy on us, using burner numbers to get around my blocks, following Sandy in a parking lot and threatening her." "I didn't threaten her," she hissed, her voice getting louder. "I just told her the truth about us. There is no us, Julie. Not anymore. I'm married. I'm happy. And if you contact me, my wife, or any of our friends or family again, I'll take this recording, and every bit of evidence I've got, and go straight to the police." She glared at me, eyes narrowing. "You wouldn't." I leaned in slightly, voice low and serious. "Try me. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I have records of everything, texts, calls, emails, the fake accounts, the confrontation at the store. I have everything I need for a restraining order. You come near us again, and you'll be legally forced to stay 500 feet away. You violate that, you go to jail. Your choice." Her whole demeanor cracked then. Her face changed, not angry, but desperate. Her voice trembled. "Don't do this to me, James," she whispered. "I have nothing. Luke took everything. I'm living with my parents. I don't even have a job. I need you." I stared at her for a long moment. I finally saw a real fear in her eyes, not fear of me, but of being completely, utterly alone. "You should have thought about that," I said quietly, "before you threw me away." Then I hit her with the final blow. "Actually," I said, pulling an envelope out of my jacket pocket, "I do have something for you." Julie looked at it like it might bite her. She opened it slowly, carefully. Inside was a check stub and a business card. Her brows furrowed. "What's this?" "That's a donation I made. In your name. To a women's shelter that helps people escape toxic relationships." I paused. "It's for the exact amount you took from our joint account. $15,000. Her jaw dropped. She blinked, looked at me, looked back down at the envelope, then back at me again, completely speechless. "And that card," I continued, "is for a therapist. Specializes in narcissistic personality disorder. I covered your first 5 sessions." That part wasn't entirely true. I'd picked the card up at a mental health fair at work. But watching the expression on her face shift, from smug to stunned to stung, was worth the little white lie. "I wrote that money off a long time ago," I said, standing up. "I don't need it. But you need something. Something real. Not another person to manipulate or bleed dry. Get therapy, fix your life, and stay the hell away from mine." She sat there frozen, staring at the stub and the card like they might explode. I turned and walked out without waiting for a response. Just as I reached the door, I heard her voice behind me. "James, please. I'm sorry. I'll do anything." I didn't turn around, didn't look back. I walked straight to my car, got in, and started the engine. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't anger, or fear. It was relief. A deep, full-body exhale. I'd finally said everything I'd needed to say for years. And this time, I meant every word. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I called Sandy. "It's done," I told her. "I really don't think she'll bother us again." When I got home, Sandy was already on the porch waiting. She didn't say a word, just wrapped her arms around me and held me tight. We stood like that for a long time, in silence, just breathing the same air. No noise. No drama. Just peace. Later that night, Julie sent one final text. "I'm sorry for everything I did. You won't hear from me again." And shockingly, she kept her word. She deleted all her social media accounts the next day. A mutual friend told me she'd moved back to Phoenix to live with her sister. Apparently, she'd had some kind of breakdown after our meeting and finally started seeing a professional. The lawyer I had on standby had the paperwork ready for a restraining order, but I never had to file it. Julie faded from our lives. For good, I hope. Sandy and I are expecting our first child. A little girl. Life's quiet now. Good. Stable. I still think about what might have happened if I'd married Julie. I probably would have been in constant survival mode, drowning in lies, gaslit into oblivion, and buried in debt from whatever new luxury she needed. Instead, I come home to someone who loves me. No performance. No mask. Just love. Real, imperfect, grounded love. And every time I feel our daughter kick, I'm reminded I didn't just dodge a bullet, I rerouted my whole life. And I'm exactly where I'm meant to be.